The Grand Gaia Kingdom fell into ruins when omnipotent beings infiltrated the Earth. That's when humanity's savior, Lord Asuma, stepped in. Asuma was powerful enough to cast a spell so destructive it could wipe out everything in its path. He not only obliterated the otherworldly beings, but also eradicated the gate connecting Earth to their world. Once the threat was gone and peace was restored, the need for a hero as powerful as Asuma disappeared too. The king decided it was too dangerous to keep someone with such immense power around. After all, the idea of someone being able to destroy everything with a single spell was terrifying. So the king chose to seal away Asuma's powers. The wine of victory Asuma had earlier turned out to be a forbidden drink that completely nullified magic. After his powers were sealed, his own subordinates, those who had fought alongside him on the battlefield, betrayed him. His own friends together combined their strength and cast an instant death spell on him. In a desperate last effort, Asuma managed to cast a reincarnation spell, hoping to at least save his soul. But it seemed like it was already too late. And so, this is how Asuma was forced to meet his end. 3,000 years had passed since the great mage died, and now, in the present, we find ourselves in a hospital. There, Asuma wakes up in someone else's body. He has no idea where he is, but as he looks around, his eyes land on a name tag, which pronounces Shiobana Asuma. The name he is reading is quite similar to his own. Moments later, doctors rush into the room, shocked to see their patient miraculously wake up from the vegetative state. While one of the doctors tries to get his attention, Asuma is lost in his thoughts. It seems his reincarnation magic has worked. Not only that, he is feeling grateful that he can understand the language these people are speaking, which means gathering information won't be an issue. The first thing on his mind is to figure out the level of civilization in this world. To do that, he inquires the doctors where the largest library is located. Both doctors are dumbfounded by this unexpected question. Noticing their hesitation, Asuma quietly uses a bit of magic on the female doctor. Almost instantly, she begins rattling off detailed directions like a parrot. The male doctor watches in disbelief as his colleague responds to our boy's queries without question. After thanking her, Asuma shifts his focus to the bag sitting on a nearby desk. He asks if the luggage belongs to him. Once again, the nurse answers obediently and without hesitation, leaving the male doctor bewildered all over again. With that, Asuma grabs his backpack and walks out of the ward. As he sits in the waiting area outside, he notices a strange rectangular object tucked inside his bag. Well, it's his phone. Since he has never encountered anything like a smartphone before, Asuma mistakes it for some sort of metal plate. Just then, the same female doctor reappears. Asuma holds up the object and questions her about it. The doctor, bewildered by his question, wonders why he's asking something so obvious. Still, she explains that it's a smartphone. Hearing this only piques Asuma's curiosity. He quickly casts an analysis spell over the device in order to truly understand the application of such an object. Within moments, he learns everything he needs to know about it. From what he understands, this smartphone is essentially a magical tool that provides access to an enormous library of books and a vast archive of visual records. Fascinated, he refines his analysis to investigate further. By scanning the device, he realizes there's no need for him to visit an outdated place like a library to gain knowledge. Simply analyzing the smartphone will grant him foundational understanding of this world. He learns that this magical tool can be used to communicate with people across great distances, and it seems to hold the ability to search for and acquire virtually any kind of information. With this little device in the palm of his hand, Asuma feels as though he holds an endless source of knowledge and power. The smartphone is something that did not exist in Asuma's era. However, from what he has gathered, despite 3,000 years passing since then, magical advancements seem to have gone extinct. In its place, something called technology has emerged. While it does appear convenient in many ways, it's nothing significant to him. It's merely at a basic level compared to what he once knew. This realization doesn't sit well with him. He spent his life protecting this world, only to see it become so backward and primitive. A while later, he finally arrives at the residence of Shiobana Asuma, the house belonging to the original owner of the body he now inhabits. Inside, he notices a family portrait over the desk. The house is empty, leading him to speculate that the original Shiobana Asuma may have lost his parents. Asuma's eyes then catch sight of a diary belonging to Shiobana Asuma. Out of sheer curiosity, he begins flipping through its pages. What he reads is far from pleasant. The diary is filled with the boy's insecurities, painting a picture of someone who felt hated by everyone around him. Shiobana Asuma described feeling unbearably lonely, and even admitted to having thoughts of ending his own life. It now finally makes sense why the owner of this body was in the hospital. Asuma then shifts his attention to the messages in the phone's chat group. The messages are filled with hatred toward him. Some people demand that he pay back his debt, while others wish for his death. The chat group is named Shibuya Ward Mage Development High School. The next day, Asuma finds himself at the very school. Some students standing around him seem bewildered to see him there. One of them even asks if he's really recovered and why he even bothered to come back. They then recall the rumors floating around. Apparently, Shiobana Asuma couldn't endure the bullying and had even attempted suicide. Yet here he is, strolling around like nothing ever happened. It's then that a yellow-haired guy, Tenoji Kiryu, enters the scene. The way this guy looks at Asuma is enough to make anyone think he's just another typical bully. Not to mention he's got a couple of lackeys standing behind him. The sight of Kiryu catches Asuma off guard. This guy reminds him of one of his old subordinates, a man from his past known as Flames Kiryu. When Asuma mutters the name Flames Kiryu out loud, the already cocky Kiryu becomes even more full of himself. He doesn't like that Asuma isn't cowering in fear like he's supposed to. The bastard even starts taunting, bringing up the recent incident where he and his lackeys left him in a broken, bloodied mess. He is more than eager to show Asuma the power of his flames once again. While they continue throwing insults, mocking Asuma's pathetic existence, our boy starts piecing things together. He recalls that Kiryu was probably one of the scumbags trash-talking him in that chat group. If this guy isn't the original Flames Kiryu, then he must be a descendant of him. He then finally decides to test Kiryu's strength and gauge his own magical energy in the process. With his fist clenched, he throws a devastating punch straight at Kiryu's face. The single blow is enough to leave Kiryu's face a bloody mess. The impact drills him into the ground, which shatters beneath him. Kiryu's lackeys go absolutely bonkers, their faces pale with shock as they witness their master get rocked by a single punch. They waste no time and charge at Asuma, desperate to salvage Kiryu's pride. But Asuma doesn't even break a sweat. Calm and composed, he lets the lackeys trip over themselves, their clumsy attempts to take him down proving futile. With his hand gesture, he then makes the bastards float up in the air. In the next moment, all of Kiryu's lackeys stumble over each other, falling into nearby students and dragging them down in a chaotic heap. Meanwhile, Kiryu, the bastard himself, takes things up a notch. Using a modern magic technique, he unleashes a barrage of fire bullets aimed directly at Asuma. The students watching from the sidelines start losing their minds. The spell Kiryu just cast is forbidden magic, something no one dares to use in daily life. Panicked, the spectators decide to run before they get caught in the collateral damage. But their worries quickly prove unnecessary because, with a simple hand gesture, Asuma stops the incoming fire bullets mid-air, just like Neo from the Matrix. Calmly, he follows up by casting a disintegration spell, completely obliterating the fire bullets. Seeing the flames turn to nothing but ashes, Asuma feels quite relieved. He is glad that his signature magic spell is working perfectly in this new era. The crowd stands frozen in awe, unable to comprehend how such a mighty forbidden spell was reduced to nothing. Asuma then decides to test his physical strength. He sprints toward the lackeys and strikes each one at the back of their necks. One by one, they drop like rag dolls, unconscious before they even hit the ground. Kiryu watches in disbelief. How could someone he thought of as a weak runt take down his so-called elite group of students so effortlessly? This realization doesn't sit well with Kiryu. His rage bubbles over, and he begins exuding an intense aura of power. The magic power exuding from Kiryu is so overwhelming that even Asuma is forced to acknowledge the bastard's presence. What's more, the aura feels oddly familiar, reminiscent of the magic from Asuma's own era. He begins to speculate that perhaps this fool has awakened some sort of latent ability passed down through generations. After issuing a bold threat to wipe Asuma off the face of the earth, Kiryu balls up his fist and lunges forward, aiming to land a devastating punch. But Asuma simply extends his index finger and stops the punch like it's child's play. Not only does he effortlessly halt the attack, but he also extinguishes the fire magic that had been radiating from Kiryu's fist. Kiryu freezes in absolute bewilderment. Seeing his magic cancelled so effortlessly is more than his pride can handle. Asuma, however, doesn't stop there. With a flick of his finger to Kiryu's forehead, he sends the bastard flying backward. In the end, the entire area is littered with Kiryu and his lackeys sprawled out on the ground. Asuma remains the only one standing. The rest of the student body, watching from the sidelines, is in utter awe. Their jaws practically hit the floor at the sight of someone they thought was weak, utterly dominating a supposed elite. Meanwhile, Asuma is too busy muttering to himself, lost in thought. This little fun fight was nothing more than a test for him. Through this skirmish, Asuma learns a few things. His latent magical power is intact and functioning perfectly, but his physical strength is slightly lacking compared to what it used to be. Asuma reflects on the reincarnation spell he cast thousands of years ago. It had worked flawlessly, transferring his soul into this body. The original soul of this body was nothing more than a floating black soul, a lifeless, lost entity that had already abandoned its physical form. In the end, Asuma had taken over this vessel, housing his own powerful soul within it. As Asuma sits in the classroom, the other students seem visibly wary of him. stealing glances and whispering among themselves. Meanwhile, Asuma can barely stomach sitting among these people, the very ones who betrayed him, exiled him, and ultimately killed him in his previous life. The only thought consuming his mind is the revenge he'll one day exact for their treachery. However, the class begins, and the teacher announces that today's lecture will include an introduction to modern magic. As the teacher delivered the lecture, Asuma listened intently, absorbing everything the teacher said. The term modern magic piqued his curiosity. It's a phrase he's never heard before. Back in his era, magic was vast, ancient, and unstructured, passed down through tradition and natural talent. But that magic, as the teacher explains, has long since gone extinct. Now, thanks to the development of science, magic has been standardized and refined into what is known as modern magic. The concept is fascinating, especially since it seems to be constructed with systems and theories that Asuma has yet to fully grasp. A while later, the students are gathered outside on the training grounds for their next class. Professor George East begins the session with introductions and then announces the main event of the day, the aptitude test. Apparently, each student will be assessed to determine what type of magic they can wield, and the teacher encourages them to give their best effort. Asuma stands among the students, his face full of doubt. He doesn't quite understand what the teacher means by this aptitude test. Seeing the confusion on Asuma's face, Professor East decides to explain further. In modern magic, aptitude is expressed through colors. Red represents fire magic, blue signifies water magic, and black corresponds to dark magic. Magic is wielded by passing mana through the body into magical circuits, but the capacity of these circuits is limited. Because of this, most people are only capable of mastering one attribute, the one best suited to them. In simpler terms, whatever attribute a person resonates with the most becomes their specialty. Finally, it's Asuma's turn. The teacher inquired about his attribute. Calmly, Asuma reveals that he doesn't have one. This, of course, bewilders the teacher, who presses him for clarification. Asuma explains that he doesn't possess a specific attribute and therefore doesn't plan to specialize in any particular type of magic. The teacher is visibly annoyed by the nonsense Asuma is spouting. How could someone not have an attribute? The other students are equally baffled as they struggle to make sense of his claim. Meanwhile, Asuma is unfazed. He knows that his magic is colorless, meaning he doesn't have a set attribute. But what most fail to realize is that this absence of a fixed attribute is a blessing rather than a curse. In simpler terms, not being bound to a specific attribute means Asuma's body is capable of adapting to all types of magic. In short, Asuma has access to every kind of magic. Meanwhile, the teacher starts getting cocky. He makes it painfully clear that, in his opinion, someone like Asuma doesn't belong in this academy. The teacher, being the scummy person he is, doesn't hold back. He goes as far as to call his own student trash in front of the entire class, all to belittle him. It's obvious he doesn't like how calm and composed Asuma remains, despite supposedly being a complete loser with no attribute. He further launches into a tirade. He points out how being colorless means having no attributes, no foundation for magic, and no way to acquire or cultivate it. To him, this makes Asuma hopeless, someone incapable of ever improving himself. As if that wasn't enough, the teacher directs his attention to the emblem on their school uniforms, which symbolizes all the known colored attributes. He uses this as a way to further humiliate Asuma, implying he doesn't deserve to wear it since he doesn't fit into the system. But that's when Asuma finally speaks up. With a calm yet confident tone, he snaps back, making it crystal clear to the teacher that being colorless isn't a weakness. In fact, Asuma declares, colorless is the strongest. Asuma requests one chance to prove himself. He boldly asks for a mock battle with the teacher, as he is determined to prove that colorless magic is the strongest. The entire student body falls into stunned silence at his audacity. A challenge like this is rare, and no one expected Asuma to make such a bold declaration. But the teacher is beyond furious. Anger burns through him, and he makes a decision on the spot. He announces that the aptitude test will be replaced with a mock battle. No restrictions. The teacher declares that Asuma will be his first opponent. The students, already shocked, are now completely dumbfounded. To think that the teacher would change the test like this, and even more so that he'd pit himself against Asuma, is beyond their comprehension. They're concerned for him, especially since Professor George is known as one of the most powerful instructors in the academy. Nonetheless, the two stand across from each other. The teacher, ever the scum, can't resist sneering. He casually remarks that mock battles sometimes end in unfortunate accidents, warning Asuma that he might regret his decision. But Asuma simply remains nonchalant. In fact, he's more concerned about the teacher's abilities than his own. This only fuels the teacher's anger, and he snaps at the student acting as the referee to give the signal. The poor hesitant student quickly gives the signal to start the battle. As soon as the battle begins, the teacher wastes no time. He immediately takes his stance, preparing to unleash his powers. Before getting started, he boasts that even in modern magic, not all professors can handle multicolor attributes. But he, and only he, is the one in the academy who can. With that, the teacher unleashes one of his signature moves, Modern Magic Blaze Bomb, Thunder Lance. The sheer power of the attack is enough to rattle anyone, but Asuma simply blocks it with a magic barrier. The way he does it makes the attack seem like nothing more than child's play. The teacher is left utterly stunned, while Asuma remains as calm and composed as ever. Growing desperate, the teacher throws another devastating spell, hoping to overwhelm Asuma. But once again, my guy stops it with his bare hands, as though it were nothing. The teacher's desperation only deepens. He's starting to realize that Asuma is no ordinary opponent, but his pride is on the line, so he continues his relentless barrage of attacks. The students can hardly process the display of power and composure Asuma is showing. They can hardly believe their eyes. Despite the onslaught, Asuma continues to walk forward, unaffected by the teacher's attacks. He breezes through everything the teacher throws at him, advancing without a hint of fear. In a final act of desperation, the teacher unsheathes his lightsaber, warning Asuma not to come any closer. But Asuma makes the lightsaber disintegrate with a flick of his hand, rendering it useless. Then, he places his hand on the scummy teacher's shoulder, signaling that the battle is over. Asuma demands the teacher own up to his actions. He wants this bastard of a teacher to reveal the ill intentions he had harbored. If the teacher doesn't admit his faults aloud, Asuma won't hesitate to disintegrate him into nothingness. The coldness in Asuma's tone leaves no room for doubt. He means every word, and he will carry out the threat without hesitation. Beads of sweat begin to form on the teacher's face as the weight of the threat weighs on him psychologically. His pride is shattered, and he's losing control. He can't believe it. Asuma, the same student he'd bullied and belittled, had been pretending to be weak all along. The revelation is mind-boggling. Eventually, the teacher's resolve crumbles. He begrudgingly admits out loud that he had been trying to beat Asuma down. The moment the students hear this confession, they're left in stunned silence. Some of them waste no time rushing to report the teacher's deplorable behavior to the headmaster, eager to see justice served for the students. Meanwhile, Asuma stands tall, savoring his victory. He looks down at the trembling teacher and asks what it feels like to have his pride shattered by someone like him, a supposed colorless fool who ended up far stronger than anyone had ever imagined. As he says this, he also makes sure to tear off the colorful emblem from his uniform that signifies the attributes. Afterwards, classes continue as usual. Inside the classroom, the students seem tense, stealing uneasy glances at him. They're still shaken by how he humiliated a teacher in front of everyone. This boy doesn't resemble the Asuma they once knew. He's like a completely different person. When class ends, Asuma suddenly stumbles across a girl. He quickly thanks her for helping him earlier, expressing how grateful he is for the time and support she gave him earlier in the class. The girl shows some humility, brushing it off as nothing. That's when my guy steps closer to her and says he has a request. If she's okay with it, he wants her to go out with him. This sudden confession leaves the girl bewildered. Not just her, but the entire student body watching is completely dumbfounded. All the other girls are getting flustered. They can't believe the double ponytail girl was invited out by the cutest guy in the class. Eventually, the two of them end up hanging out together, and she shows him around the school. After they're done with the little tour, he thanks her once again for showing him around, hoping he hasn't been too much trouble. The girl quickly downplays it with humility. However, inwardly, she feels disappointed, realizing that he only invited her to hang out so she could show him the school. Not quite what she had hoped for. She was literally looking forward to having a date with him. But suddenly, she snaps out of her thoughts, feeling disgusted with herself for being so desperate to have a boy around. As she's going through this turmoil, Asuma overhears her and asks, confused, what the heck she means by that. The girl quickly brushes it off, insisting it's nothing. Next, they visit the magic analysis room, a place even students can use if they apply for access. After the tour is complete, Asuma thanks her once again, promising that he'll repay her for the kindness she showed him. The girl quickly starts blushing at his words. Then, she suddenly asks him a weird question, wondering if he is really Asuma. She immediately apologizes for the odd question, but she admits that she just can't shake the feeling something's different about him. It's as if something in his personality has changed. To this, Asuma explains that he spent some time in a coma, and after waking up, he can't seem to remember his past self. He's not sure how he used to behave or how his current behavior differs from before. The girl apologizes again for asking such a strange question, and after that, they part ways. Later, Asuma returns to the magic analysis room and secretly sneaks inside by infiltrating the security system. Once inside, he places his hand over the digital window to perform an ancient magic analysis. Right then, a bunch of system windows pop up in front of him. After reading through everything, he concludes that combining ancient and modern magic isn't as far-fetched as he initially thought. He then decides to apply for the access to the magic analysis room in order to learn more about modern magic. Suddenly, a guy approaches him and asks if he's Shiona. Asuma is spooked by this random guy appearing out of nowhere. What's even more strange is that Asuma didn't feel his presence until now. On top of that, this guy looks oddly familiar, like one of his subordinates from the past, known as Isaiah. Out of curiosity, Asuma asks the unknown guy his name. The dude introduces himself as S4 Katsuki. S4 represents the strongest individuals in the academy, which makes this guy one of them. Katsuki then brings up the question about Asuma being colorless, finding it very intriguing. Since he finds Asuma interesting, he expresses his desire to be friends. At first, Asuma responds with silence, but eventually he extends his hand and shakes hands with Katsuki. As they shake hands, Asuma feels something unusual. He senses an overwhelming magic inside Katsuki. It's as if Katsuki is intentionally letting Asuma feel his power, casually showcasing his modern magic in the process. After their brief interaction, Katsuki leaves, but not before leaving an impression. Asuma is fascinated to realize that Katsuki is wielding white magic so effortlessly. The next morning, we find ourselves in the staff room, where Asuma submits his application to use the magic analysis room. The attendant approves his request and schedules a time slot for him at 4 p.m., giving him 3 hours to use the facility. As he sits in class, Asuma reflects on the magic analysis room. While the room is equipped with the latest technology, he does not need that for now. He is more interested in the ancient magic grand panel, a type of ancient magic used during Asuma's lifetime in that era. It's a secret technique that only those born with a natural magical aptitude, known as magical entities, could use. The mechanism works as follows. It absorbs mana from the atmosphere, compresses it within the mana slots inside the body, and determines the magic to be activated. The refined mana is then transferred from the mana slots to the execution slots. This unstable process of activation was standardized using a magic circle. The precision and elegance of a magic circle were directly proportional to the skill of the mage. Designed and drawn by the caster, mana would flow into the magic circle, and upon release, the magic would be activated. However, ancient magic could only be used by the chosen few. Those without magical talent were unable to refine mana within their bodies. But things appear to have changed in the present era. The mana slots and execution slots within the body have been replaced by an organ called the magic circuit. With the invention of a tool called the smart rod, mana is automatically injected into the magic circuit, and magic circles are artificially generated to activate magic. In other words, the process has been further generalized, making magic activation possible even without innate individual differences. On the flip side, the manualization of the process has reduced the overall power of magic compared to ancient magic. Of course, magic can't be used if the smart rod is taken away. With all this information in Asuma's mind, he starts formulating a way to develop a hybrid magic system that combines ancient techniques with modern technology. To achieve this, he knows he must first master modern magic at the highest level and conquer all attributes. He proceeds to calculate the foundational theory for his hybrid magic hypothesis, confident that the quantum computer in the room can handle the task. With the press of a button, the process begins. While waiting for the calculation results, Asuma decides to step out and grab a drink. But suddenly, the door bursts open, and before he knows it, Asuma finds himself falling. Apparently, someone has just attacked him using a modern magic spell, a targeted area-type spell at that. He can't figure out where the hit came from, and the fact that it slipped past his detection bugs him to no end. As he collects his thoughts, he recalls his earlier interaction with Katsuki. It dawns on him that Katsuki must have done something shady during their handshake. Though Asuma isn't sweating over this sneaky attempt, he's definitely disappointed. Katsuki clearly had no intention of becoming friends, but now, Asuma is ready to remind this bastard of his place. As he steadies himself, Asuma realizes he isn't actually falling from the sky. It must be a recognition-altering spell, a spell designed to create a false sense of reality. This spell is just like the one his friend Isaiah used to craft. To think that even after 3,000 years, he never expected to see this familiar ability in action. However, if he keeps falling through the sky like this, he isn't sure what comes next. That's when a swarm of bats suddenly rushes at him. But Asuma quickly casts one of his spells to fend off the danger. But just fending off these monsters isn't enough. At this rate, he'll be on the defensive forever. He needs to pinpoint Katsuki's location if he wants to get out of this situation. First, he decides to use declaration magic to stop his fall. But before he can act on this, he notices spike balls forming around him, clearly resembling the magic used for a lightning strike. After a bit of struggling, he figures out that whenever he casts any counter magic, it triggers an intercepting spell. He casts another spell to dissipate the lightning bombs before they can explode and take him down. There's no time to use declaration magic either. Suddenly, he finds himself in a vast space where he can literally see planet Earth from the distance. He can't breathe in the vacuum of space, but then, out of nowhere, meteoroids start dropping down. At this point, Asuma begins to feel tired of all this nonsense. He knows this has become an endless fight, and he just wants to be done with it. With his own spell, he obliterates the meteoroids like it's nothing. Asuma can easily defend himself against these mass-based attacks. They're relatively simple to intercept. However, this place is a vacuum, completely devoid of air. At this rate, he knows he'll eventually suffocate. That being said, Asuma is forced to admit that this magical space is constructed with remarkable precision. It's almost like a work of art. Then again, that's not surprising. It's exactly what he'd expect from Isaiah, who always admired beautiful things. But precisely because of Isaiah's aesthetic sensibilities, there's also a flaw. Asuma knows someone like Isaiah would want to witness everything that is happening here with his own eyes. That means he must be nearby, watching. There has to be a peephole he's using to observe him, and that peephole is the weak point Asuma is determined to find. Meanwhile, Katsuki can sense that Asuma is trying to resist his magic. But despite noticing his efforts, Katsuki is confident that he won't let Asuma escape this easily. Another giant meteor comes toward Asuma, ready to incinerate him. But he keeps his eyes closed, maintaining his focus and concentration. He's planning to release the concentrated mana stored within his mana reservoir and cast a grand magic circle around himself. Through this enormous magic circle, Asuma intends to analyze the space around him, uncover the anomalies, and locate the enemy's surveillance point. But just before the meteors collide, Asuma finally pinpoints the surveillance hole Katsuki has been using to spy on him. Without hesitation, he shatters the illusion entirely. The fabricated space collapses, and Asuma finds himself back in the school. He then leaps through the window on the rooftop where Katsuki is waiting. Asuma doesn't waste any time. He gets straight to the point, demanding to know why Katsuki cast that spell. Katsuki remains silent, offering no explanation. Asuma continues to press him further, asking him why Katsuki would try to harm him, especially since they were supposed to be friends. That's when Katsuki finally reacts. He drops the act and starts acting all chummy. With an almost unsettling admiration, Katsuki expresses how impressed he is. The way Asuma broke through his illusion magic was absolutely insane, bordering on the impossible. Not to mention, his chantless levitation magic is just on a whole another level. Any praise he can shower is not enough to describe how amazing our boy is. To think someone would use a magic circle in such a cunning way was beyond Katsuki's expectations. He keeps yapping away, non-stop, throwing out endless praise for Asuma, marveling at his ingenuity. But then, Katsuki's chummy demeanor suddenly shifts into a sassy, smug expression. Without hesitation, he casts another spell, his intentions crystal clear. Bring Asuma to his knees. As the spell comes toward our boy, he is stunned to realize that he did not even sense the casting of another spell. This time, Katsuki unleashes a modern magic spell called Meteor Fall. Small air tornadoes swirl into existence, quickly morphing into heavy metal rods. Asuma is momentarily awestruck, as Katsuki manipulates the wind with such precision to launch these deadly projectiles at him. But when those rods rain down, Asuma dodges them with ease, slipping past the onslaught as if it's nothing. At one point, he narrowly avoids being pierced, but he stops the rods just in time, preventing them from ruining his face. Katsuki, on the other hand, feels totally turned on by Asuma's incredible display of power. He is totally invested and wants to see even more of what Asuma is capable of. So, using his wind magic, Katsuki literally yanks electricity poles out of the ground and throws them down toward Asuma. The wires are crackling with an immense amount of electrical power. Asuma quickly leaps backward, narrowly avoiding the deadly current. It's clear now, he's starting to struggle under this relentless barrage. He can tell that Katsuki is doing everything in his power to leave no escape route, trying to corner him. The rods are thrown again, but with a single hand gesture, Asuma obliterates them effortlessly. However, the debris bounces back and hits him. It's not brutal, but it's definitely annoying. Katsuki begins laughing, clearly entertained by the sight. The fact that Asuma is reaching his limits amuses him greatly. This bastard is enjoying every second of it. But it seems all the trash he's thrown at Asuma was just the beginning. In a move that takes Asuma by surprise, Katsuki manipulates the plane's trajectory, making it plummet directly toward him. Proudly, Katsuki proclaims that this is his magical world. And now, he eagerly watches, curious to see how Asuma will defend against this new wave of destruction. But my guy quickly counters with magic of his own. He cancels out the spell this bastard was using and makes that so-called passenger plane explode mid-air. Turns out the plane wasn't even real. It was just an illusion, a clever distraction. The real threat was a needle, hidden in plain sight, speeding toward him. But before it could pierce him, Asuma snatches it mid-air like it's nothing. Katsuki is left standing there, his mouth wide open. To think his concealed needle was discovered and intercepted like that, it's absolutely insane. It becomes clear that Asuma had been onto him from the very beginning. He knew right away what kind of shady scheme this bastard was pulling. From the start, he saw through Katsuki's tricks. The falling debris, the magic wind manipulation, the scattered objects like utility poles and metal sheets. It was all part of the decoy. Katsuki's grand move was the illusion of a crashing plane designed to steal Asuma's focus. In that crucial moment, he launched magic needles imbued with unconsciousness spells, his true ace up the sleeve. The so-called meteor fall was nothing but a flashy bluff. Though Asuma gives some props for the impressive setup, he makes one thing crystal clear: these petty tricks aren't even close to enough to take him down. Katsuki, on the other hand, is in complete disbelief. He can't accept that Asuma saw through his ploy. In his mind, it's impossible. There isn't a mage alive who can detect his magic activation. He's convinced that only the legendary great mage from 3,000 years ago could have detected his magic activation, and clearly, Asuma is not that legendary mage. But then, Asuma reveals the truth. It was pretty obvious from the start. Since Katsuki uses concealing magical traces, it was clear his finishing move would have to be something subtle, something quiet. In a flash, Asuma dashes forward so fast he practically teleports, appearing right in front of Katsuki. He then exposes the crucial mistake Katsuki made. He used too much magic, giving Asuma the chance to analyze it. He then extends his hand, casting a spell on the stunned bastard. At first, Katsuki is completely bewildered by what's happening. But as the brilliance of the spell unfolds, he starts to get all chummy. Whatever magic Asuma is using is so thrilling to watch, it's just too exciting. Then, Asuma decides to let this fool taste a piece of his ancient magic. Vibration Jam. That one spell completely obliterates the ground beneath them, sending shockwaves through the air. Katsuki is finally knocked down, utterly overwhelmed by the hit. Asuma, on the other hand, stands tall, victorious, with no doubt in his mind that he's come out on top. The scene transitions to Magic City, the royal capital of Grangaya. In a serene courtyard, a purple-haired figure is fully immersed in painting the breathtaking scenery on his canvas. This man is none other than Isaiah, and this place is a glimpse of the past memories of our boy, Asuma. Asuma steps into the scene, admiring the work and offering his usual praise for the beautiful painting Isaiah has created. Isaiah, as always, is completely smitten to receive compliments from his most beloved person. At that moment, Curio Flame and another lady, whose name remains unknown, join the scene. Watching the heated exchange between the two, Isaiah decides to walk his own path, but before leaving he promises to Asuma that he will make sure to create a portrait of him next time when they meet. Curio Flame, however, can't stomach how Isaiah is smitten over Asuma. Eventually, Isaiah starts walking away as well, deciding he doesn't want to stay with people who don't truly appreciate art. The only time he finds joy is when he spends time with the great mage himself. As he walks down the corridor, he suddenly notices Saiwan. Saiwan explains that earlier, he was summoned by the Lord and received an imperial command. It's something secretive, so he makes sure to speak it only into Isaiah's ear. Whatever Saiwan says shocks Isaiah deeply, leaving him absolutely dumbfounded. Apparently, Saiwan tells Isaiah a lie that Asuma is plotting a rebellion against everyone. Saiwan confirms this without an ounce of hesitation, as he believes the Lord's future sight is absolute. Of course, this revelation leaves Isaiah completely bewildered, as he can barely stomach the thought, unsure why Asuma would do such a thing. The scene then transitions back to the present, where we find Kitsuki waking up in the infirmary after suffering a humiliating defeat at the hands of our boy. His head aches, as if he had a terrible dream. That's when our boy enters the infirmary with a water bottle and offers it to Kitsuki. It's apparently an electrolyte drink with sugar, meant to help him recover faster and replenish the fluids he lost while groaning in pain. Kitsuki questions why our boy is going to such lengths to help him. In response, our boy reminds him how brutally he was struck by the magic directly. There's no way he could have escaped unharmed, so as a gesture of goodwill, he's trying to help since his magic inflicted that damage. He also delivers the fortunate news that Kitsuki's magic circuits are functioning normally, and it seems there were no serious consequences. Suddenly, Kitsuki notices the wet towel our boy is holding. Since the towel is soaked, it doesn't take long for Kitsuki to realize that Asuma must have been wiping off his sweat while he was unconscious. This means Asuma has been tending to his injuries the whole time. Our boy smiles softly, admitting that he would rather avoid losing a skilled mage. This lightens up Kitsuki's mood, and he finally grabs the water bottle. Kitsuki then speaks about Kirio, assuring our boy that in S4 no one is a bully like Kirio, so he should not harbor any disdain. While Kirio might be a powerful individual, Kitsuki claims that he too doesn't agree with Kirio's way of thinking. He reveals a little about himself, saying that he's a simple guy, and the only reason he picked a fight with our boy was out of curiosity to fight someone who had defeated Kirio. He then apologizes to Asuma for all the shit Kirio has caused him. Seeing how earnest Kitsuki is, our boy is forced to admit that he's not a bad person at all. Our boy then promises to forget the ambush Kitsuki had launched against him, but in exchange, he wants Kitsuki to leave S4 and stay with him at this academy. He shares his goal of creating a new faction of his own, and wants Kitsuki to be a part of it. The reason our boy wants Kitsuki by his side is that, since he doesn't have any knowledge of this new world, he wants to rely on Kitsuki. In the present, he's ultimately alone, and to accomplish anything, he needs allies. For that reason, he wants Kitsuki to walk alongside him and help him achieve the goals he has in mind. It's clear that Kitsuki is totally swayed by what our boy said, and it doesn't take long before he falls to his knees and pledges his loyalty to him. In that moment, Kitsuki feels a wave of nostalgia. It's like he's finally achieved something he's been longing for so long, and yet he can't figure out why. Suddenly, the school nurse shows up at the scene, looking flustered as she catches the two of them in this unexpected interaction. She panics, clearly not intending to ruin their moment, and quickly decides to leave. Asuma, meanwhile, gets ready to leave as well, since he's already done what he came for. But before heading out, he hands over some papers. It's basically analyzed magic circle charts of Kitsuki. He tells the teacher to use them as a reference for treating Kitsuki further. With that, Asuma leaves, leaving the poor woman standing there completely stunned. Out of nowhere, she starts panicking, overwhelmed by the level of detail in the charts. She's so fascinated by the analysis that she even offers Asuma a spot in the laboratory as a special student. But my guy politely turns her down, saying he'll consider it after he graduates. And just like that, he leaves quietly. Now we're back in the magic analysis room. Honestly, guys, I have no idea what this machine or room is even about. This manhwa is so trash it doesn't explain anything properly. And to make it worse, the translations are equally garbage. Anyhow, after using the supercomputer for a while, the analysis of the new magic has finally been completed. A system window pops up, displaying the results of the analysis. The system window congratulates him, announcing that his theory has established a brand new magic system. It even recommends presenting the discovery at an upcoming conference. After running these tests, Asuma feels relieved and proud that his hunch was right all along. He's thrilled that the foundational theory for modern hybrid magic is finally complete. Now, he plans to individually arrange the magic formulas according to specific objectives and adapt them to the magic circuits. Precise verification will also be necessary to solidify everything. With all the pieces coming together, my guy is hyped to shock the world by reinventing the fundamentals of magic entirely. The next day arrives. During the lecture, the teacher's mind keeps drifting back to Asuma. He can't shake off how much the boy has improved. All the teachers have noticed this drastic change in him, and some are convinced he must be cheating. But this particular teacher has other ideas. He's determined to test Asuma himself to confirm if the boy is truly a genius, or if he's been cheating all along. He's especially confident that there's no way anyone could cheat during an oral exam. So, the teacher scribbles a weird equation and points at our boy, demanding that he explain it to the class. The teacher feels all smug, convinced that Asuma could never solve something this complex. He's expecting him to fail and just admit defeat. But my guy is built different. He stands up from his seat, casually makes his way to the board, and without a shred of hesitation, starts scribbling down the solution. The entire class is left absolutely speechless. Not only does Asuma solve the equation, but he also provides a detailed and well-thought-out explanation for every single step, like it's nothing. The smug teacher is now sweating bullets. All he can do is stand there, stunned and utterly embarrassed. After putting this trash teacher in his place, Asuma calmly walks back to his seat like a boss. Meanwhile, the teacher in the background is still spiraling, struggling to comprehend how Asuma pulled that off. He even entertains the ridiculous idea that maybe Asuma is using some kind of next-gen AI, because the level of explanation he gave is exceptional. Even someone from Tokyo's top magic university would struggle to keep up. As Asuma takes his seat, the double ponytail girl finds herself falling head over heels for him. When lunch break finally rolls around, a bunch of eager students swarm the double ponytail girl. They're all desperate to get closer to Asuma and think she might be their ticket to do it. And when Asuma enters the classroom, it's like a celebrity just walked in. Everyone freezes, acting starstruck and fascinated. As he takes his seat, the double ponytail girl invites him to hang out with her in the cafe after school, if only he has free time. But if Asuma is busy, the double ponytail girl assures him she doesn't mind. My guy pauses for a moment, thinking it over, while the students on the sidelines eagerly wait for his response, practically holding their breath. Eventually, a smirk spreads across Asuma's face as he earnestly accepts her invitation. The students lose it. They go absolutely wild with excitement, overjoyed that Asuma has agreed to join. Meanwhile, through the window, we notice someone perched in a tree, keeping a close eye on Asuma. It's another female student, and judging by her expression, she can't stomach all the attention Asuma is getting. It seems she's plotting to ruin everything for him. The scene transitions to the Ebisu Magic Cafe. Inside, Asuma is surrounded by his fans, all of them eagerly bombarding him with questions about what kind of food he likes and what he plans to order. My guy, ever the gentleman, smiles warmly and reciprocates their enthusiasm with kindness. That killer smile of his is more than enough to make everyone swoon. The double ponytail girl, Ruri, steps in and tells everyone to calm down. Finally, Asuma reveals that his favorite food is cheeseburgers. The students, now even more fascinated, ask him who he's closest to out of everyone. Without hesitation, Asuma answers that it's Ruri, the double ponytail girl. This sudden confession sends Ruri into a frenzy, leaving her blushing and flustered. Meanwhile, the rest of the students can't help but feel jealousy at Asuma's words. Ruri, completely embarrassed, refuses to believe what Asuma just said. She's so caught up in the moment that she doesn't even notice herself crushing the disposable cup in her hand. The spilled coffee burns her hand. As she cleans her hand, Asuma quickly apologizes because it's his fault she burned her hand. But Ruri apologizes instead, saying it's her fault for letting all the students cause such a ruckus. After enjoying their time at the cafe, the group decides to head out together. On the way, Asuma casually shares his phone number with everyone, causing yet another wave of excitement among his classmates. Meanwhile, in the shadows, we see this shady student lurking, keeping a close eye on Asuma. The mysterious guy quickly pulls out his phone, reporting to someone that Asuma has just left the cafe. It does not take Asuma long to sense something suspicious in the air. His eyes scan the area. Out of nowhere, a gang of students swarms the area, surrounding Asuma. It's clear they're here to confront him. My guy stays calm and casually asks why they're blocking his path. But the group of students remains silent, refusing to explain. Just then, a Lamborghini screeches into the area. The sound commands immediate attention as all the students automatically stand in double file like it's some sort of ritual. One of them hurries over to open the car door, and out steps a guy in glasses. He looks every bit the part of someone filthy rich, with his luxury car he just pulled up in. The students go wild, clearly in a frenzy at the sight of this guy. Without wasting time, the glasses guy locks his eyes on Asuma and directly addresses him, introducing himself as Fukada Sakane, the president of the club federation at the academy. It doesn't take long for Asuma to pick up on something strange about Fukada. There's a familiar presence emanating from him, something almost nostalgic. That's when it clicks for Asuma. Apparently, Fukada is actually a descendant of Saiwan, one of Asuma's old colleagues from thousands of years ago. Fukada, on the other hand, makes his intentions clear. He's here to challenge Asuma to a magical duel. The entire crowd of students is left in absolute awe at this declaration. Among the entourage of elite students, this lady with a smirk catches our eye, and she is part of S4. Asuma, on the other hand, is caught off guard by this sudden challenge. Apparently, he doesn't even know what a magical duel is. Confused, he turns to Ruri, who's standing behind him, and quietly asks if she knows anything about it. Ruri leans in and whispers all the juicy details he needs to know about this mysterious concept into his ear. Fukada once again questions him if he will accept this or not. The real reason Fukada is throwing this challenge is simple. He can't stomach the fact that someone else is flaunting their powers and acting like the top dog in the academy. To take the spotlight back, Fukada is ready to throw down without hesitation. He performs some magic mojo, and his sword, still sheathed in its scabbard, begins to glow with an intense light. Asuma can feel the waves of negativity radiating from Fukada. This isn't just a magical challenge, it's laced with killing intent. The pressure Fukada is exuding is overwhelming, commanding the entire space around him. It's not just Asuma feeling it, the students on the sidelines are equally paralyzed by the suffocating aura. But as Asuma watches Fukada's determination, he's reminded of the old Siwon he knew. Siwon had the same indomitable spirit, always striving to climb higher and improve himself no matter what it took. A small smile forms on our boy's face when he remembers his old friend, and he finally accepts the challenge. Fukada couldn't be happier to hear this. A triumphant grin spreads across his face as he slides his sword back into its scabbard, causing the overwhelming aura to vanish in an instant. Before leaving, Fukada promises that the duel will take place tomorrow at 8 a.m. in the Academy's central arena. With that, he proceeds to leave in his Lamborghini. Meanwhile, Asuma stands there, calmly thinking about what just happened. He knows Fukada is making a mistake by challenging him, because there's still so much Fukada needs to learn before he can even think about winning this fight. Still, inwardly, Asuma hopes his old friend's descendant prepares well for what's to come. During the night, while Asuma sleeps soundly in his bed, he drifts into the realm of dreams. What makes this dream intriguing is that it's a lucid one. If he remembers correctly, a class he took recently mentioned that lucid dreaming can allow someone to deeply access their subconscious and latent memories. With that knowledge, Asuma decides to give it a try. He begins to concentrate, intending to delve into the memories of this body's original owner. Asuma recalls that when he first entered this body, there was a faint trace of unused mana lingering in its magic circuit. He had deliberately left it untouched, keeping it safely within him. That mana carried traces of how it once flowed through the body when the original owner was still alive. In essence, those traces meant the original owner's thoughts might still remain. With this in mind, Asuma formulates a bold plan to use magic to salvage the previous owner's consciousness. But the problem is that such a spell doesn't exist in any ancient magic records. But that doesn't faze him. He's determined to develop one here and now. He begins muttering a stream of scientific-sounding magic jargon, likely to impress the audience. He gets to work crafting his spell. It's a blend of logic, instinct, and sheer brilliance. Eventually, after meticulous effort, he succeeds in creating the spell. When he finally casts it, the experiment proves successful. The consciousness of the original owner begins to manifest before him. While Asuma feels satisfaction at his accomplishment, the original owner appears bewildered, utterly lost about where he is and what's happening. Suddenly, a sharp, stingy pain pierces the original owner's head, causing him to drop to his knees in pain. This sudden agony, however, is a clear sign. The synchronization between his consciousness and the body's buried memories has begun. The original owner of the body finally remembers everything. He recalls that he had attempted suicide in his room, lost consciousness, and was then taken to Shibuya Matsutu Hospital, where he fell into a comatose state, never to wake again. Or so it should have been. Asuma gently reminds the owner that, in reality, he's currently borrowing his body. Though Asuma apologizes for taking over without asking for permission, the original owner reassures him that it's fine. In fact, he's relieved. He's sure he would have remained in a vegetative state and never been able to use this body again. What truly piques his curiosity, however, is the question of why someone from 3,000 years ago, like Asuma, has reincarnated into his body. Asuma then takes his time to explain everything that led him to this point. The original owner is left completely boggled when he learns that Asuma defeated Kiryu, the person who used to bully him all the time. But what blows his mind even more is the fact that Asuma also took down the scummy teacher George East, who was supposedly the strongest instructor in the academy. Asuma shrugs casually, saying they were malicious towards him, so he knocked them out. The original owner is even more stunned when he learns that Asuma also defeated Kitsuki from S4. Asuma simply affirms this without a shred of doubt, once again reiterating that they were malicious towards him. The poor original owner has absolutely no clue what in the world he's hearing. To think that a nobody like him is now the center of attention for the entire academy, it's too much for him to even process. But as he reflects on it, he realizes it no longer matters to him since he's already dead. As for why someone from 3,000 years ago like Asuma reincarnated into his body, the original owner believes he's figured it out. While in the coma, he had a dream. He remembers floating in pitch-black darkness, with a meteor shower nearby. The meteors were being sucked into a massive black hole one by one, consumed by its gravity. Among all the shit going on, one light caught his attention. It was flickering weakly, and for some reason, it drew him in. It seemed like it was struggling desperately against the pull of the black hole. At that moment, he thought to himself that if it didn't want to be pulled in so badly, he should help it. The original owner made a decision. He would take its place. And of course, that flickering light was none other than Asuma, who now resides in this body. The original owner, who had been nothing but a failure, a man who couldn't accomplish anything he set out to do, someone who wanted to die. He had kept living despite wanting to die. Meanwhile, our boy, Asuma, was the man who desperately wanted to live but was dying. The original owner feels relieved and even glad that Asuma became the new owner of his body. He believes this was how fate intended it to happen, and he is deeply grateful for it. That's when Asuma finally speaks up, revealing something that surprises the original owner. He explains that they are now of one mind and body, inseparable. Without either of them, the current Asuma wouldn't exist. From now on, they're in this together, and this is their shared story. Asuma promises to make the owner's wishes come true, a heartfelt vow that makes the owner's eyes well up with tears of happiness. With this promise, the original owner feels ready to look forward to how their story will unfold together. Suddenly, the original owner notices his feet starting to blur and fade. It seems like the dream is ending, and it's time for Asuma to wake up. Before vanishing completely, the original owner thanks Asuma one last time for bringing him back to life. He reassures him that from now on, he'll keep an eye on their journey, watching how everything that is going to happen. With that, the original owner disappears into the void, leaving Asuma alone. This is then that Asuma silently vows to himself to honor the promise he made to the original owner. Together or apart, their story is only just beginning. Even though the owner is nothing more than a remnant of lingering thoughts, Asuma still wants to fulfill his lingering wish. The scene transitions to S4, Fukada Shion's residence. In the courtyard, Fukada sits right in front of a crystal, fully concentrated. This crystal is actually known as ulzite nitride orichalcum, a rare metal mined only from the Fukada family's long-held mines, and it's the hardest metal to exist on Earth. But then, the guy swings his blade and effortlessly cuts the crystal into multiple pieces like it's nothing. It's then that we meet the lady again. Fukada is annoyed she's here, but he decides to let it slide since it's an emergency. This lady is also from S4, and her name is Mizuhara Miyoto. The lady is fascinated by his skill. She compliments how the fracture toughness and wear resistance of this crystal are 30 times that of diamonds, and the mana conductivity is 100 times that of iridium. It's the most important rare metal for manufacturing the 17th generation smart rod. Using ulzite nitride orichalcum as a test target is just too extravagant. Fukada then mentions that he's already watched the video of Asuma's recent fights with both teacher George and Kiryu. He finds it hard to believe that Asuma, who was just a runt not long ago, is now smashing everyone in his path. The lady also finds it quite intriguing. Fukada reflects on how both Kitsuki and Kiryu are formidable in their own ways, but they still ended up losing to Asuma. However, as a member of S4, he makes it very clear that he won't tolerate anyone threatening the Academy's prestige, nor will he show mercy. Mizuhara agrees to this, and adds that while he might be attributeless, underestimating him would be a big mistake they'll regret. With his magic swordsman Fukada-style secret technique, Fukada is confident he'll crush everyone in a magical duel. Swearing on the moon itself, he vows not to let himself down. To him, the Academy's authority takes precedence over human life, and he's determined to maintain his status and dominance. Mizuhara, on the other hand, seems a little more excited about turning Asuma's beautiful face into a bloody mess. The scene then transitions to the past, where we meet Siwon, Fukada's past self. Here we see Asuma meeting Siwon. It turns out Siwon has discovered a new magic that can unlock one's latent abilities and potentially increase mana capacity by about tenfold. While it's undeniably impressive, there's a catch. This magic amplifies the caster's aggressive tendencies, causing them to manifest outwardly. The scene shifts to the magical duel central arena's waiting room, where our boy is getting ready for his battle ahead. While Asuma prepares, Ruri is fired up, determined to give him all the support she can muster. But as she thinks about it more, she realizes Asuma has been relying on her a lot lately. He keeps turning to her for help and treats her very kindly. Lost in her flustered and slightly pervy thoughts, she's suddenly jolted back to reality when Asuma asks her which tie looks better. She points at the black tie, and he ends up choosing it, thanking her for her input. He then asks her if winning the duel would increase his rank and, as a reward, whether he'd get more usage time in the magic analysis room. Ruri confirms, assuring him that once he ascends in rank, he'll earn those extra privileges. The girl asks him why he's so concerned about something like this right now, of all times. To this, Asuma simply smiles and responds that it's the most important thing to him. He then questions her, wondering why Fukada sees him as such a big threat for no apparent reason. Ruri clarifies that, in Fukada's eyes, Asuma is the one who disrupted the peace of the students just by existing. On top of that, they're claiming he's been caught engaging in inappropriate actions within the Academy. She then points out the Academy newspaper, asking if he's seen it yet. She shows him the headline, revealing that S4's Fukada Sakine is going up against the attributeless Shibona Asuma in an upcoming fight. The article also mentions that the club union president, who governs order within the Academy, will mete out punishment to any student who threatens the Academy's reputation. It seems clear now, there's no other choice but to fight Fukada. However, Ruri tries to remind him that it's better to avoid mingling with Fukada entirely. She explains that Fukada is a master of Japanese magic swordsmanship, the heir to a conglomerate that produces rare metals for the smart rod, and a major donor to the Academy, donations that amount to billions. Because of that, no one can go against him within the Academy. No matter what reason Asuma might have for challenging the Academy's top dogs, the public will always be swayed by the righteous nonsense Fukada spins. Asuma understands the rationale behind Ruri's statement, but he brushes off the gloomy thoughts for now. Instead, he asks her how he looks in his new getup. The freshness and confidence he's radiating catch Ruri off guard, and she can't help but admit that he looks absolutely perfect. With their preparations complete, they decide to head to the duel. As Asuma walks through the corridor, he runs into Kitsuki. Kitsuki leans in toward Asuma and whispers something shocking. After delivering the news, he simply walks away, leaving Asuma to process it. Meanwhile, Ruri is left bewildered, wondering what they just talked about. Finally, we arrive at the central arena. The place is buzzing with students, all hyped to see the showdown. Then steps forward the big cheese, Fukada. The girls in the crowd absolutely lose it, getting a little too excited over him. From the other side of the arena, our boy makes his entrance. The moment he steps out, a silence falls among the ladies. Now the two contestants face each other, their intense gazes locking as if staring into each other's souls. Fukada, despite everything, feels a flicker of admiration for Asuma. The fact that Asuma didn't run away and came to face him head-on earns some grudging respect. My guy accepts the gratitude earnestly, while Fukada keeps questioning, asking who exactly he is. This sudden question catches Asuma off guard. He can't help but wonder if this dude has somehow realized that he's reincarnated. Fukada continues, openly admitting that Asuma has indeed defeated 2 members of S4, Kiryu, and Kitsuki. He even says it's admirable for Asuma to have achieved such a feat. Since those victories were neither flukes nor accidents, Fukada's naturally curious if our boy is even the same person they all once knew. He wants to know who Asuma really is. As he asks, Fukada begins releasing an immense amount of pressure, rippling through the air and literally sending students flying. But this isn't enough to faze Asuma. Standing firm, he calmly declares that he is none other than Shibona Asuma, nothing more, nothing less. Seeing how calm and composed Asuma is, Fukada finds it frustrating. With a sassy smirk spreading across his face, Fukada makes it clear that he doesn't care who Asuma is, but he's definitely not going to underestimate him. He begins unsheathing his sword, boldly declaring that he'll crush this pest like Asuma with all his might and make sure to leave nothing behind. But my guy remains sassy, completely unfazed by Fukada's jabs. He wants his opponent to fight at full strength, and he's not going to show any mercy either. With both contestants ready, the referee prepares to start the magic duel. Out of nowhere, Fukada gestures for the referee to wait. He then proceeds to explain that, while he does intend to crush Asuma with all his might, he's prepared to show mercy as well. After all, it's the pride of the noble Fukada family. He offers Asuma the chance to submit his withdrawal immediately, forgoing the duel to avoid unnecessary pain. Asuma takes a moment to think it over. Then, he finally speaks up. He addresses the referee and asks, if he wins this match, how many ranks will he ascend in the student rankings? The referee elaborates that Fukada, as the head of the Fukada Union, holds the top rank at first, while Asuma is currently ranked 1200, which is an F rank. So if Asuma happens to win this duel, he'll jump straight to A rank, which is just one step below S rank. With that in mind, Asuma lays out his terms. He offers Fukada the chance to withdraw from the duel too. Asuma's demands are simple. If they raise his rank to S, he'll accept a default loss, sparing Fukada from the pain. He apologizes in advance to the students who gathered just to watch this duel, saying they won't get the fight they expected. The students are left in awe by Asuma's bold declaration. His suggestion is enough to infuriate Fukada beyond belief, and he's more than ready to crush Asuma, along with the last bit of pride he has left. But Asuma remains unfazed, giving Fukada an open challenge to try as he might. Fukada turns to the referee and orders him to commence the match. With that, the battle officially begins. Asuma starts strategizing his first move. Knowing Fukada is the reincarnation of Siwon, he realizes that holding back would be a foolish choice. So, he decides to use his ancient magic at full power right from the start. He conjures his most powerful spell, and the unique, authentic design of his magic circle leaves everyone in awe, because none of them have ever seen a magic circle designed like this, and it's not even in the modern magic library. With his spell ready, Asuma unleashes a powerful beam of lightning, sending it directly toward Fukada. But interestingly, Fukada remains calm, as if he's confident he can avoid the attack. True to his expectations, Fukada conjures a shield made of earth magic in front of him, blocking the direct hit. The trick he just pulled off is an automatic counterattack earth attribute spell. It turns out the bastard had scattered sand imbued with magic all across the arena beforehand. Asuma isn't that surprised though. This move is typical of the Siwon of Earth, known for his meticulousness and planning. Meanwhile, Fukada can't help but feel a flicker of admiration for Asuma. Just as he had heard in rumors, Asuma's magic is of an unknown origin. However, Fukada is confident that this won't be enough to stop him, and he's determined to end this with a single strike. He begins to unsheath his sword. Asuma immediately senses what his opponent is planning. The sword in Fukada's hand is a unique weapon, one that combines a smart rod with mana imbued in it. The guy begins charging his sword with all the power he can muster. Fukada is actually fusing battle aura with earth attribute barrier magic. In other words, he's creating an inviolable absolute space. If Asuma attacks now, the barrier will automatically counter, and in the next instant, Fukada will retaliate with an offensive strike. Meanwhile, the ladies in the audience are cheering wildly for Fukada, practically losing their mind and their composure. Suddenly, the ground beneath Asuma's feet begins to crack, and a swirling sand trap appears right below him. The sand seems alive, quickly latching onto his feet, trapping him in place. The bastard is making sure our boy has no room to defend himself when he launches his attack. Right on cue, the sneaky sucker executes his signature move, the magic sword technique Dancer's Crescent Moon Slash. Mizuhara Miyoto is also fully invested in fights. She knows that this slash is powerful enough to cut through even the hardest metal on Earth, and she's convinced Asuma is as good as dead. But Asuma stands there, calm and collected, completely unfazed. In the next moment, he yanks off his tie and activates a hardening magic spell, Mage Metallize, turning the tie into a sword. With just a single flick, he demolishes Fukada's ability as if it were nothing. Once again, the spectators are left with their jaws hanging open in disbelief. Not done yet, Asuma quickly follows up with another magical technique, Annihilation Magic, Particle Veil, and effortlessly slices through the sand hands holding him down. Then, Asuma disappears from his position and appears right behind Fukada, ready to deliver a devastating blow. But it seems Fukada has an invincible barrier surrounding him. As soon as our boy lands his strike, his sword is grabbed by a massive sand hand that emerges through the barrier. Asuma releases his sword and dashes toward Fukada. More sand hands come at him, but my guy uses one of his techniques to disintegrate them like they're nothing. His sword quickly slithers back into his hand, and he clashes blades once again with Fukada's sword. Meanwhile, Asuma continues to press Fukada hard, pushing him back. The bastard is clearly struggling. This is the first time he's been pushed this far in a battle. But then, his strained expression morphs into a sassy smile as he claims that he now has a reason to unleash the true potential of his sword. He uses one of his signature moves, Magic Sword, Full Moon of Organs, and lunges at Asuma with lightning speed. The sword is fast, and it looks like there's little time for Asuma to dodge. Meanwhile, Mizuhara Miyoto revels in the fact that the technique Fukada just used is the secret sword technique of the Fukada family, combining Disturbance-type Magic Sword and Penetration-type Magic Sword. In simpler terms, this sword can't be dodged. As expected, Asuma takes the full brunt of the sword head-on, but Fukada quickly follows up with another technique, Moon Crater Bomb, causing a massive blast that sends Asuma flying backward. The entire student body is once again stunned. The sheer brutality of the attack is insane, and they start doubting whether Asuma is even still alive. Even Fukada begins to feel concerned, wondering if he used too much force and may have actually killed the poor guy. He turns to the referee and asks about the result, wondering if Asuma has truly died. The referee quickly rushes toward Asuma to check his condition, but in the next moment, Asuma stands up, exuding more of a menacing aura than ever before. Fukada is left speechless, his jaw hanging. It's unfathomable that Asuma didn't get a single scratch, let alone sustain any brutal damage. With that, Asuma is ready to fight for real this time. Asuma walks menacingly without a shred of hesitation, and Fukada quickly takes his stance, ready to go toe-to-toe. Inwardly, Asuma thinks to himself that after taking so much damage in this fragile body, it can't keep up with the inflow of mana he's providing. So, he decides to end this quickly. He then uses one of his techniques, rapidly condensing mana into the palm of his hand before channeling it into his body, circulating the mana at high speed to temporarily enhance his physical abilities. As soon as he does this, he begins to exude an even more terrifying amount of mana. This is actually his first attempt, yet it surprisingly feels easy. As expected, real combat against a strong opponent provides the best environment, and now, Asuma is confident that he can construct theories and conduct experiments simultaneously. Fukada, on the other hand, notices how freely Asuma is standing and charges to take advantage of the opportunity. But before he can react, Asuma moves so fast that Fukada doesn't even register what just happened. Fukada quickly conjures up his sand hands to grab Asuma's feet, pinning him to the ground. He's sure that this time Asuma won't be able to escape. But Asuma is so powerful that he grabs the sand hand like it's nothing, and yanks this giant sand golem out of the ground and throws it aside like a sack of potatoes. After destroying the sand golem, Asuma is certain that his opponent no longer has the ability to counterattack. As Fukada begins to dread the worst, he is convinced that it's all over now. The bastard finds it impossible to comprehend. He represents the Japanese Magic Swordsmanship Association, and he's Fukada Shion, heir to the Fukada family. He can't fathom being so easily defeated. This is when he decides to do something daring. But before he does, the scene flashes back to the past, thousands of years ago, when Siwon reveals his new magic, a power that can unlock latent abilities and potentially increase mana capacity by tenfold. However, it comes with a side effect. The caster's aggressive tendencies are amplified and manifest outwardly. Siwon is still working on refining this magic, but they've reached the point where human trials can be considered. Asuma acknowledges the risks and asks if Siwon has found any candidates for the trials. Siwon confirms that he has one capable test subject who doesn't complain. Hearing this, Asuma walks away, as he has complete faith in his comrade, and is sure that he will produce good results. Back in the present, something snaps inside Fukada, and his entire personality shifts. He begins to laugh like a maniac, a madness overtaking him. Asuma immediately senses the unusual surge of power inside Fukada's body. That's when it hits him that Siwon's experiment subjects were not just anyone. It was Siwon himself. Currently, Fukada's personality has completely changed, and the experiment has succeeded. He now possesses tremendous power, but at the cost of this twisted personality he has developed. I know, guys, this manhwa is trash. Most of the things just do not make sense. If you made it this far, it's a miracle.